Okay, so a few of you have been asking for specific things to how to do in Logic or your DAW, and one of those was compression. So I've got this bass part in Logic. Here's how it sounds. Okay, so I'm going to load my compressor in here. I've already got one loaded in. So load whatever default compressor you've got in your DAW. So on a compressor, we've got these basic controls, and then various ones on different doors may have some controls like this or a limiter attached to it, and we'll just go through what each one of them means in this one, and they apply pretty much universally in most compressors, including real physical hardware compressors as well. So we've got our threshold, which goes from 0 down to -50, and that is the level at which you want compression to start happening. So anything that goes over that level, when you turn it down, compression will be applied. Anything that's under it, compression will not be applied. The ratio is how much compression you want applied, and the higher number you go, the more you apply it, the greater the compression ratio. It can help if we look at this graph here. If I start to turn that up, you can see that more and more that you turn it up, the greater that compression becomes. So for example, if I have it at 3:1, that means that if for every 3 decibels that go over this threshold, only 1 will come out. So without compression, it would be 3 decibels, and then 1 will come out. If I go to 8 decibels over, 1 will come out. So the ratio of compression is greater. So this is more compression going clockwise. The makeup gain is simply a post processing for these gain. So if you're taking out 8 decibels of a signal, then you may want to boost it by a few decibels to maintain the signal chain. These controls down here, we can see if we start to apply some compression here. The knee is how sharply you want that compression to take place. So do you want it nothing, 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 everything? So nothing, 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 everything, or do you want it nothing, nothing, okay, a little bit, gradual, okay, everything? So if you don't know where to start, middle is a good place, okay? And then attack and release, they are basically how fast you want the compressor to work and how slow, once the signal has ducked back under the threshold, do you want it to release the compressor. If you're not sure, you can hit the auto button, but a good place to start would probably, for most instruments, will probably be around about 20 milliseconds attack and around 50 to 100 milliseconds release. For things like bass guitar, which is what we're going to hear, I'm going to set it at around 100, and then I'm going to leave that attack at 20. This button here is the auto gain. Off means that no gain is applied after the compression. If you set it at -12, it means that Logic will, or your DAW will, look at that signal after it's been compressed and all of that, and regardless of what's happening here, it will try and bring it up to -12, so it will auto level it or add auto gain. So if you're not sure, -12 is a good place to start. If you just want it off, turn it off, and then you can adjust your volumes manually or with your output volume here. Going to 0 dB will bring it up to absolute maximum level. That's probably not a good place to be. That's quite a specific thing. So -12 or off are the good places to start. Up here we've got a limiter. A limiter is essentially a compressor with a very high ratio. So if I turned this all the way up, it's effectively what you call a brick wall limiter. So nothing goes over it depending on your threshold. Okay, so if you want to turn that on, you just click on and then you bring your threshold down. A limiter is a very sharp, very effective tool. You wouldn't normally use a limiter on individual instruments. You would probably use it on more of a drum bus or a master bus or a mix bus. And you've got a couple of types of distortion. And then one of the most interesting features is this mix here. So normally that would remain completely at 100%. You want 100% of the signal to be affected, or you want that to be mixed in 100%, so all of the signal is being affected by the compressor. But there are certain times when you actually only want 50%. So 50% of the dry signal will get through and 50% of the compressed signal would mix together. And there are some instances where you want to compress really harsh so you get a pumping sound, but that's not the main sound, and you just want to mix it in a little bit. For most applications though, 100% is fine. And then lastly, we just have an output gain, master output, and effectively you want to be trying to match this level over here going in with this level over here coming out. So if it's too loud and it's peaking, you bring that down, and if you've compressed it a lot and not added any makeup gain, you might want to turn it up a bit. So let's hear that with the bass. Let's take all those settings off. Okay, let's play that bass. So this is no compression applied. I want to use a compression ratio of about 4:1. That is a good place to start for most instruments, most stringed instruments in a rock setting, drums, bass, guitar, vocals, and then increase or decrease and experiment with it. So at the moment no compression is being applied. I've selected my ratio, and now I'm going to bring down my threshold, and you're going to start to see this come down here, and you're going to start to see some compression happening here, and then I'll flick to the meter and show you what's happening there. Here we go. Okay, you can see quite a lot of compressions happening now. You can see this graph here. If I now flick over to the meter, so I'm actually lowering that the volume, the gain of that bass by 10 decibels. If I put it on the off setting, you'll hear just how much I've taken out. If I put it back on the auto leveling there, you'll hear it's just trying to raise it when it's coming over the compressor threshold. And if I put it on 0 dB, you'll hear why we don't often use that. And there we go. So that's quite harsh. I'm going to take it back till I'm doing about -5 on average, and that's a good place to start for most things. Use your ears, listen to it, and you can play around with any of these settings. And I wouldn't normally use a limiter, but I'm just going to show you what it does. So I'm going to turn the limiter on, and when that light goes on, that little light there, the limiter is active, and it's a very fast compressor with a very high ratio. So I'm just going to bring it down. Okay, and there it's just showing me that it's on, and you can maybe choose a distortion setting, up to you. And then I'm not going to do any different mix, but if you were going to, you know, have a pumping sound or something, then you could. And then I'm just going to level this off. So I've taken a bit out, so I'm just going to add it a little bit back in. That peaked there from when I turned on the 0 dB function. So you can see now it's starting to just sound a little bit compressed, maybe a bit more reasonable. This is obviously a pre-recorded bass. If you had a real bass plugged in, this would work a lot better. So I'm just going to turn it off and do an AB. I'll turn my mic off so you don't have that sound in there. So that compressor is just helping to level out what's happening with that bass and several of the peaks and troughs there. So that's a really short little tutorial on compression. Hope that's helped. Let me know in the comments what other Logic and DAW techniques you want some mini tutorials on. Other than that, folks, have a great day.